What if we tell you that Africa in the next few years will look like China? Not Europe, but China. China rose from famine to factories, from colonized to unstoppable, without asking the West for permission. Now Africa is rising, but something feels too familiar. Is Africa walking China's path? If yes, what can Africa learn from China? Let's find out.
Imagine a sweeping plan, billions in capital, a new route to power, and Africa at the center of it all. China has unveiled what might be the largest investment outline yet for the continent, a figure often cited as $500 billion. Tonight, we examine the realities behind that claim, its implications for Africa's future, and how the global order may be shifting before our eyes. China has long been Africa's most persistent economic partner. In 2024, bilateral trade between China and African nations reached $295.6 billion, a year-on-year increase of 4.8%. China's exports to Africa grew to $178.8 billion, while imports from Africa were $116.8 billion. On the investment side, commitments have also surged. In 2024 alone, China committed $29.2 billion across African infrastructure, energy, mining, and transport projects, a 34% increase year-over-year. Chinese public and private entities now operate infrastructure contracts in 35 African nations, with heavy focus on power generation, rail, and ICT sectors. These numbers help explain why talk of a grand $500 billion plan resonates. It is ambitious. Yes, but not wholly detached from ongoing trends. When voices in media and commentary refer to a $500 billion China-Africa investment plan, they often refer to a cluster of proposals, pledges, and strategic ambitions stretching over decades. To date, no single official document confirms a locked-in $500 billion contract. What can be verified? China's zero-tariff policy expansion. In mid-2025, Beijing planned to extend zero tariffs to all least developed African countries, expanding an earlier 2024 policy covering 33 African nations. The Beijing Action Plan 2025 to 2027, adopted at the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, includes pledges of $50.7 billion in new investment, infrastructure, credit lines, and cooperative projects. So, the $500 billion figure is best understood as a symbolic aggregate, a vision of what China and its African partners believe could be mobilized over time. China's 2025 strategy emphasizes diversification. The traditional model, raw commodity exports for Chinese capital and goods, is evolving. Key sectors poised to receive major attention: infrastructure and connectivity, rail lines, highways, ports. China is already revitalizing the Tazara Railway in Tanzania-Zambia with new agreements. Green energy, solar and wind projects are rising. Africa's imports of Chinese solar panels surged in 2025, with 1.57 gigawatts imported in May alone. Digital and telecom. China-Africa trade is shifting toward technology-intensive, high-value goods. Mining and minerals. Raw resource deals will continue, but increased attention is being given to refining and value addition locally. These investments do more than build. They shift power, controlling trade routes, energy systems, and digital infrastructure. African governments are seeking balance. Many embrace Chinese capital and technology, but they also push for local ownership, job creation, and industrial sovereignty. The Forum on China-Africa Cooperation (FOCAC) is now central to these dynamics. During the 2025 Expo, deals across energy, agriculture, technology, and trade were highlighted. Africa is not passive in this process. Leaders demand equitable terms, debt relief measures, and transparency in contracts. Civil society groups, meanwhile, warn about hidden costs, debt traps, and governance risk. The continent's potential is enormous, but so are the stakes. Beijing's growing African presence does not go unchallenged. From Washington to Brussels, officials express concern over China's soft power and strategic footprint. Some propose new trade packages, pivoting toward technology transfer, climate finance, and partnership-based aid. Others warn that if China's relationships deepen unopposed, the US and Europe may lose bargaining power in a continent once central to their foreign policy. In effect, Africa is shifting from the receiving end of geopolitical influence to becoming an arena where influence is actively contested. No grand plan is without pitfalls. Among the primary concerns, debt sustainability. Projects backed by Chinese loans risk generating unsustainable liabilities. Governance and transparency. Contracts with opaque clauses have fueled suspicion and pushback in some African states. Environmental and social impact. Large-scale infrastructure can displace communities, degrade land, and provoke resistance. Over-reliance on Chinese supply chains. Africa could become locked into dependencies on Chinese goods and parts. Geopolitical backlash. Western powers may leverage diplomatic, trade, or aid mechanisms to counterbalance China's gains. These risks don't necessarily derail the vision, but they demand vigilant negotiation and oversight by African states. If fully realized, a $500 billion China-Africa investment wave could reshape Africa's trajectory. Industrialization, local value chains in manufacturing, agro-processing, and tech. Regional integration, corridor economies linking landlocked and coastal nations under AFCFTA frameworks. Global influence. Africa becomes less dependent, more competitive, and a central player in 21st century trade. New diplomacy. Power is negotiated through infrastructure, capital, and connectivity, not just military alliances, but transition is hard. Success hinges on strong institutions, local capacity, environmental stewardship, and equitable deals, or the vision may bring more questions than answers. China's Grand Africa vision is bold. Whether that $500 billion figure becomes an anchor, an aspiration, or a negotiation tool remains to be seen. What is clear is that the future is open, and that Africa's path will no longer be written by others, but by its own hand. Tonight, we witness the beginning of a new chapter in global trade, one in which Africa is not the periphery, but the pivot.